Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. And in this video, I want to look at the chart of Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button and please subscribe if you have not already. All right. Now she's done a lot of things. It's kind of hard to characterize her in one sentence or whatever. All right, she was born Joan Alexandra Malinsky. She was a comedian, actress, producer, writer, and television host. She was noted for her blunt, often controversial comedic persona. Heavily self-deprecating and acerbic, especially towards celebrities and politicians. She's considered a pioneer of women in comedy by many critics. She started her career in the comedy clubs of Greenwich Village alongside her peers George Carlin, Woody Allen, and Richard Pryor. She rose to prominence in 1965 as a guest on The Tonight Show, hosted by her mentor, Johnny Carson. The show established Rivers' comedic style. And in 1986, with her own rival program, The Late Show with Joan Rivers, Rivers became the first woman to host a late-night network television talk show. She subsequently hosted The Joan Rivers Show, winning a Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Talk Show Host. From the mid-90s, she became known for her comedic red carpet award show celebrity interviews. Rivers co-hosted the E! Celebrity Fashion Show, Fashion Police, and starred in the reality series Joan and Melissa, Joan Knows Best, with daughter Melissa Rivers. In addition to marketing a line of jewelry and apparel on the QVC shopping channel, Rivers authored 12 best-selling books and 3 LP comedy albums under her own name, Mr. Phyllis, and Other Funny Stories. Next to last Joan Rivers album, and What Becomes a Semi-Legend Most. She was nominated for a Grammy Award for her album, and Tony Award for Best Actress in a Play for her performance in the title role Sally Marr and her escorts. She competed alongside her daughter in the second season of Celebrity Apprentice, ultimately winning the season. And she posthumously received a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album for her book, Diary of a Mad Diva. In 1968, New York Times television Jack Gould called Rivers quite possibly the most intuitively funny woman alive. In 27, Rolling Stone magazine ranked her 6th on its list of 50 best stand-up comics of all time. And she was introduced in the Television Academy Hall of Fame, and she's subject to a documentary about her. All right. She's born in Brooklyn, New York, to a Russian Jewish family, immigrants. Let's see. She grew up in Brooklyn, went to school, unremarkable childhood. She was interested in drama. She was overweight when young. And she had body image issues. She attended college for 2 years. She graduated with a BA in English Literature and Anthropology. Let's see. She worked various jobs as a tour guide for the Rockefeller Center, writer, proofreader, fashion consultant. All right, and she changed her name to Joan Rivers, obviously. She appeared in off-Broadway run Driftwood with Barbra Streisand. She performed in numerous comedy clubs and became friends with fellow comedians Woody Allen, George Carlin. She worked alongside noted musicians Bob Dylan, Barbra Streisand, Carly Simon, and Simon and Garfunkel. She was in a cabaret act called Jim, Jake, and Joan, and they split up. They were doing a rally for Bobby Kennedy. Joan showed up with a Republican Senate nominee Kenneth Keating button on, and Jim said, "Take it off." She said no. She was sticking to her political guns, and Jim said, "Who needs you anyway?" that was the end of Jim, Jake, and Joan. Stubborn gal. Good for her. She made a guest appearance on The Tonight Show. I think she applied like 7 times and finally was accepted, or auditioned rather. And that started off her career because she didn't act, and Johnny Carson said that she was going to make it, or she was going to be a star. You're going to be a star. You're going to be a star, kid. All right. So basically, she kept appearing on various shows, and she kept becoming more and more popular. Johnny Carson had her on a bunch of times, and she was a guest host on about a lot. And she did a bunch of other things. I mean, it's too much to detail every single thing that she did. And you can read about her. She wrote and directed, and did all kinds of stuff, and generally had a lot of success. Some of the things that she wrote or produced were not super successful, but overall, she was great. And probably her best is just her candidness and her one-liners and her ability to just be like quick and witty. That's what she's known for, and for being like a talk show host and stuff like that. Stand-up special, Saturday Night Live, Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album. Let's see here. So, all right, she was hosting the Tonight Show a long time, and then she Fox Television Network that was announced that it was giving her a late night talk show opposite Johnny Carson, and Johnny Carson found out, not through her, and he did not like that, because she was competing with Johnny Carson. Late Show starring Joan Rivers, making Joan the first woman to have her own late night talk show on a major network. That's pretty groundbreaking. All right. Carson was a competitor because it appeared at the same time, and Carson hung up on her and prohibited her from ever returning on his show. Right. And then the following hosts, Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, out of respect for Carson, never had her on either. Jimmy Fallon finally broke the trend and had her on. Yeah. And let's see. Okay. Now her husband, Rosenberg, don't know his last name, don't know his first name, but his last name's Rosenberg, was the producer for the show. Let's see. Rosenberg committed suicide in Philadelphia. So, okay, here it is. All right. The relationship, it's like we tried it. When Rivers challenged Fox executive who wanted to fire her husband, Edgar Rosenberg, as the show's producer, the network fired them both. So, she stood by her husband. They fired both of them. He committed suicide in Philadelphia, and she blamed the tragedy on his humiliation by Fox. A lawsuit would later be filed against Hacker over the article. Okay, so apparently there was an article written during this period. A published interview with Rivers, purportedly written by Ben Hacker, suggested that Rosenberg had tried to drive Rivers insane during his final illness. So it was a hit piece, really humiliating her husband. Rivers was quoted as saying, "I think things are about finished with Edgar," when calling her former Fox boss Barry expletive Diller. All right, that's funny. Fox attempted to continue the show with a new name, The Late Show, and rotating guest hosts. All right. She appeared in Spaceballs as the voice of Dot Matrix. Classic, right? That's Mel Brooks. All right. she got on in 1989. The Joan Rivers Show was a daytime television show. It lasted for 5 seasons, and it was a success. And earned Rivers the daytime Emmy, outstanding talk show host. The Joan Rivers Show is a better showcase for her funny edginess than her doomed 1988 Fox nighttime program was. The best thing about this show is Joan Rivers' stream of consciousness chattiness is allowed to guide the show. You never know where the conversation is going to go. Yeah, and I guess I agree, because her personality is just like just how she is candidly. It's really witty and funny and entertaining. She won the Emmy. Okay, and then well, a lot more moderate to substantial success. A lot of different things. Not going to detail all that. And then just like a lot more stuff happened. Celebrity Apprentice, documentary, co-hosted E! Show, Fashion Police. Her and her daughter did stuff like fashion, celebrity, I don't know, stuff like that. She wrote books and recorded albums. I mean, she's just all over the place. She designed jewelry for QVC. All right. And then she died. And here's where it gets a little bit conspiratorial. I don't know if you all saw the clip, but she was asked candidly, she was walking and a reporter asked, so when do you think we'll have the first gay president? She's like, oh, we already had the first gay president, Barack Obama, and Michelle's a transgender, right? And then she died. Coincidence? I don't know. And YouTube, if you're watching, don't get offended by that. That's just actually what happened. I'm not making a judgment on it. So, yeah. So you be the judge. There could have been some foul play there because she aired some dirty laundry, or at least potentially so. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much most of what Joan Rivers is about. And she had a lot of cosmetic surgery, and her death doesn't really make sense. I don't buy it, but who knows? Who knows? I don't want to just be like, because there's so much confusion, misinformation, and just because something sounds like something, I don't want to say definitively it is so. I want to leave some room for, maybe. I think people are too quick to say it sounds like this happened, so therefore it definitely happened, or whatever, because a lot of times people come to bad judgments and conclusions thinking that way. It's okay to be unsure, right? We don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. Somebody might know for sure. I don't. In any case, this is Joan Rivers' chart. She's a Gemini sun, fellow Gemini, 1 degree from my sun. And this is 3rd house. And this is so strong for writing and media, communication, and humor, right? The air signs, especially Gemini and Aquarius, are extremely prominent in a comedian's chart. You will see this 90-some% of the time. Strong Gemini, Aquarius. And of course, Mercury in Gemini, and Mercury conjunct Venus in Gemini. Right. So that's both for her wittiness and her humor and her writing and her stand-up and her communication and her speaking, but also for her Mercury conjunct Venus is very creative too. So it's like fashion. She's interested in fashion too, and jewelry and design and all that, right? All right, so Sun is the fifth lord. So again, creativity, performance, entertainment, right? It's very, very strong in the chart. Mercury. Before I forget, look at her out of bounds planets. Okay, Moon is out of bounds, Mercury and Venus. And what is this? Lilith. Right. But the main one is Moon is way out of bounds. And then Mercury and Venus. And only retro main planet is Saturn. Okay. So yeah, Mercury is ruling the third house and the sixth house. And that's sixth house also is great for writer, because it's a very studious house, very, nose to the grindstone, just getting shit done, working hard, and daily efforts is very sixth house, and it can apply to so many things, but especially for Mercury domination, Mercury dominant, third house, sixth house. Mercury's in good dignity here, in domicile, and so it's strengthening the Sun and Venus. So fifth house, sixth house, third house, seventh house, and second house speaking, and then people are coming to her as a media persona. Okay, that's all very prominent for her. Also, Black Moon Lilith is conjunct the Sun, and so especially because Gemini, so she can get into if you listen to Joan, her music is comedy. The things she talks about can get like dirty, dark, sexual, but it's all so funny, So I left Black Moon Lilith in there because it's sort of like the dark sexuality vibe, especially for women. It has that, and Gemini's like, here she's turning it into comedy, right? And so that's very strong. Yeah, Chiron also in Gemini, and Chiron being the wounded, rejected. She had a lot of self image issues, body issues, cosmetic surgery, and that was a huge part of her comedy. She if Chiron is sort of like the dirty underwear, she brought that right out into her comedy, right? She talked about it, and it's kind of like taboo, shocking, like she always making fun of herself, and that's hilarious. It was absolutely, I mean, go listen to her if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's really, really funny. It's dirty, it's dark, it's a little taboo, it's raunchy, it's all the things that make most people uncomfortable. She loved to talk about and joke about. And so that's also, if we look, Chiron is square the nodes, so that is going to be an issue for her. Body image, feeling wounded, rejected, getting plastic surgery, right? That's going to be a part of it, being the sort of like overweight when young, right? And then like working, she's going to have to deal with this Chiron, with feelings of rejection, of being out of place, of woundedness, of issues, self issues that she has. And it's going to be a big part of her comedy, right? Third house for the Sun, for a star, this is a media personality, right? The Sun is always like, you want to look where the Sun is when you're looking for somebody who's famous, because are they famous, or is their work famous, or is it both? It's both for Joan Rivers, but they're not going to be, this is not going to be, she's not going to be able to be on TV and on stage unless her Sun has some prominence, right? And some good light, to it. Otherwise, it's just going to be her work, right? But the Sun is prominent because it's ruling the fifth house. It's made strong, bona fide by a domicile Mercury in Gemini. So the Gemini house is strong. Third house is strong. It's sextile by sign to the ascendant, You know, obviously third house, it's quite good, especially like I said, all things media, right? Talk show host, writing books, stand-up comedy, all that, writing and speaking, communicating. And it's quite opposite the moon. And, you know, this is a big, bright full moon in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius, and yeah, I just want to qualify again. I said air signs, but also fire is really important for comedians because the comedy comes more from the air, but the exposure comes from the fire, right? In order to get it out and present it in a very big, bright way, you need that fire. Otherwise, it's just going to be, you know, maybe like a comic writer. Maybe a comic writer doesn't have strong fire. They just have some really good air, you know, combination. So they're really funny, but they can't present well, right? You need the sun in a good position, and then like some good fire, you know, Sag, Aries. Leo would do too, but she doesn't have any Leo. So yeah, so the Sag moon and the full moon in general, that's really going to brighten her persona, make her heart, you know, her heart come out. Ninth house is, you know, it's generally a good house. It's not like, you know, it's trying the ascendant or the first house rather, and it's quite high in the sky. It's similar to the fifth house. Fifth house is really good for performance, for entertainment, for being on stage, for being in the spotlight, for fun and games. And ninth house similarly has that quality. It's very high in the sky. It's a bit more philosophical, high academic, you know, high level academia and stuff like that. You know, for being very intelligent, moon and Sag is great. Also very wild and free, and you know, Sag moons are great fun, you know, because they're just their emotions are just really lit up, you know, by Sagittarius, really wild kind of people, very fun people, right? So her ascendant is Aries, and this gives her that you know, really sparky quality, defiant spark, right? And I left Eris here because it's right on the ascendant, and I'm going to go back to show just really what Eris is because it's so prominent in her chart. So mythologically, Eris was the goddess of personified spirit, daimona of strife, discord, contention, and rivalry. She was often portrayed more specifically as the daimona of the strife of war, haunting the battlefield and delighting in human bloodshed. Now, if you take this a little more with comedic expression, then it makes a little bit more sense because she's not like a violent person, obviously. Because of Eris's disagreeable nature, she was the only goddess not to be invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. When she turned up anyway and was refused admittance, she raged and threw a golden apple amongst the goddesses, inscribed to the fairest. I mean, you could just see like Joan Rivers doing a comedy about this mythology and like playing, you know, the heiress role and being perfect for that, right? Three laid claim to it: Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena, and the rivalry brought about the events leading up to the Trojan War, right? Sowing discord and strife. That's hilarious, right? Eris was closely identified with the war goddess Enyo. Homer used the name interchangeably. Her Roman name was Discordia. So that, I mean, I'm not going to read anymore, but and just to give you an idea, it has an orbit of 559 years. It's the most massive and second largest known dwarf planet in the solar system. It's more massive, but slightly smaller than Pluto. So just so you get an idea, it's about the size of Pluto, but it's way further out than Pluto. And it has it's got a very wide orbit, much wider than Pluto. And named after the Greco-Roman goddess of strife and discord. It's the ninth most massive known object orbiting the sun. and the 16th most massive overall in the solar system, counting moons. Let's see. And it's about, let's see, where is it? I think it's like 3 times further than Pluto or Neptune. In any case, it's really far out there. All right. Don't want to take too much time, but that's Eris. So discordia, strife, just being rebellious, being not afraid to cause trouble, to make trouble. And, with her comment about the Obamas and, her standing up for her husband, which got them fired, and, stuff like that. Like her wearing that pin, the Republican pin to the Bobby Kennedy rally, and her getting disbanded from her trio group, whatever that was called. That's all very Eris. So she was very like fiery and not afraid to cause trouble, not afraid to cause war amongst the men and the other celebrities and gods and goddesses and all that, right? That's Joan Rivers. And there's something very likable about that, probably especially because I don't know if it's because she's a woman, but certainly not in spite of it. Like I don't think anyone faults her at all. Maybe some people do, but I certainly don't. And I think it's great. It's like this feisty, fiery woman who stands up and doesn't just, go along with the crowd. I think it's awesome. I mean, there's something like kind of disgusting and, about like somebody who's just like afraid to rock the boat and cause any trouble. It's just like spineless jellyfish. She's got a spine. Anyway, she's very fiery, very feisty, very Aryan, very Martian. She's got this Eris, Discordia right on the ascendant, and her ascendant Lord Mars is in the 6th house in Virgo. Right. So conflict, strife, competition, that's all going to be very strong for her, as well as writing, producing, behind the scenes, editorial work. That's all going to be very 6th house Virgo type stuff. Criticality, just being very well rounded in an academic, like an academic comedian, somebody who can do it all, right? And she did it all. Not everything she did was hugely successful, but she could do it all. And this is heightened by the Jupiter. Jupiter is expanding this Martian energy. Jupiter is, let's see, let me go back. Mars is ruling the 8th house as well. So definitely, and it's not, it's in the 6th, it's not in any great dignity, Mars. It's in Virgo. It does okay. It's not terrible. So we can see that there's going to be a lot of conflict with her. And discord, and she's a troublemaker, but she's a hard worker, aggressive, not afraid to do stuff. And Jupiter here, Jupiter is ruling the 9th house and the 12th house. So bringing the creativity into the worker area, daily grind, and Jupiter's in Virgo, so it's in detriment. Jupiter in Virgo, and if you look at like Lenny Bruce, who is a fellow comedian, planets that are in poor dignity have a natural vulgar quality. They naturally become, they can, it's like they're inverse, right? Inverse of good dignity. They're showing their belly side up, right? Their dark side. So she could talk. She's bringing in a lot of the darker, heavier elements. Naturally, the 8th house stuff, death, sexuality. That's going to be in her wheelhouse. As is a vulgar Jupiter, a sort of somebody who's not religious, not particularly. I don't want to say not spiritual, but certainly not representing a very spiritual front. I don't want to say that anyone who has a Jupiter in Virgo, Jupiter in Capricorn is going to not be spiritual, because it's not always the case. Jupiter and Gemini, right? But certainly they're not going to be having a religious, very religious personality. It's not going to be on the, it's not going to be, that's not going to be their expression. It's going to be a bit more vulgar, crude, rude. So her Jupiter is not expressing something very exalted. It's a little bit more dirty. And for comedy, that works out well, right? You know, if it's going into business, that's sort of like dirty business. But if it's comedy, it's like, that's funny stuff, right? Somebody who's not afraid to talk dirty, who's not, yeah, some comics take it too far. Some comics are really vulgar, really disgusting, and it's just like, distasteful. But if it can be like, you know, if it's good dignity mixed with poor dignity, like her Mercury's in good dignity, right? Her Saturn is in good dignity. It's in Aquarius, and a perfect trine with the sun. And actually, like, there's a really nice harmony here between Sun, Saturn, Moon, and then Mars and Jupiter, right? It's not all super harmonious with these squares here and opposition, or in conjunct rather. Well, Moon opposite Sun, but it's all pretty close within range. I mean, Jupiter's the lowest degree at 14, and Moon is the highest at 17, but it's still well within range of each other, right? And that's really, really quite good, quite strong. It's an unusual shape here, but her career path was also quite unusual, right? It wasn't a straight line. It wasn't this, that, or the other. She kind of got her hands into everything: late night show, writing books, doing stand-up comedy, plays, movies, all kinds of stuff, right? So it is a bit, her career does take kind of lopsided nature, but she was quite good at all these things, maybe some better than others, but overall, you know, really, really strong. And so I just want to point out that just because you see a square or in conjunct, it's not necessarily bad. It's going to bring in some tension, and with certain planets and certain combinations, I think it's actually good. For instance, I'm gonna make a video about this. But if you take Virgo, Virgo is the 6th sign, and if you go 6 from the 6, you get to Aquarius, and same with Pisces. Pisces is the 12th sign, so if you go 12 from the 12th, you get Aquarius. So the Aquarian Piscean, Piscean Virgo axis is complemented by Aquarius because of the nature, and each axis has its own nature, which I'm gonna make a video specifically about that. But needless to say, Aquarius embodies sort of a complementary quality to Virgo, right? Virgo is very uptight. Virgo is very critical and hard, and Aquarius is also very intellectual, but like completely in a loop, like original, quirky, weird, often hilarious, or at least absurd kind of way. So it's very complementary to Virgo, the uptight intellect and the complete, you know, absurd intellect. You know, and just as a side note, if we take, you know, why is Aquarius complementary to Pisces? Well, Pisces is highly creative, but like lacking boundaries. You know, and Virgo is sort of like a opposite complementary, but Aquarius is a off-axis complementary because it represents a strong intellect and good logical ability. Meanwhile, not destroying the kind of creative expansiveness of Pisces, right? Which Virgo kind of does negate, right? Virgo is almost like two opposite. Aquarius is like, okay, I see you, Pisces, and I'm going to one-up you with some more logical intellect than you have going, but I'm going to keep your originality and your creativity, right? So that sort of thing. In any case, we see this Saturn in Aquarius here, which is very strong because Saturn is domicile lord along with Uranus of Aquarius, but Saturn is also ruling the MC. So 10th lord in the 11th house is great because it shows career success, especially if it's in good dignity. So here we have a leader and an authority figure in groups and networks. So like, you know, hosting a show, a talk show, you know, third house media, trine the sun, that's perfect for her. You know, anything that requires her to be like a leader or a boss and, you know, getting the limelight and like talking, third house media, stuff like that is excellent. Hosting shows, being a star in reality television, where she just gets to be Joan Rivers. You know, that's all going to be excellent. And as well, like writing stuff, obviously, all of that. You know, she's going to be a real authority, a real leader, a real success, with anything like that. Quirkiness, absurdity with, you know, Aquarius. Saturn is a bit more dry. It's not necessarily very funny itself, but Aquarius is, and if it's trying all this Gemini stellium here, that's really quite good. I mean, obviously this is not going to be very funny, but it's going to be very hardworking. This sixth house Virgo stuff, it's going to be very hardworking. Jupiter is still going to benefit the ascendant lord. Jupiter conjunct Mars, the ascendant lord. It's going to expand her being, her persona, going to make her, you know, successful writing. I mean, obviously Virgo is not going to be as good, right? But you know, it's still there, and Neptune is there also benefiting. Neptune also probably not in such great dignity, but for like, you know, combined with the comedy, then you're getting that vulgarity, the underbelly, the poor dignity, likes to be rude and crude, and but like I said again, repeating, for comedy, it's good stuff, you know, like somebody who's not afraid to go there to talk about all the dirty stuff that you know, is funny, it's hilarious. You know, all that dark stuff makes great content for comedy. You know, if you can do that, you know, great. So Neptune is going to help out with that, make her very prolific and excellent comedy writer, which she was. Right. Jupiter is square the moon. Moon is square Jupiter, and Jupiter's ruling Sagittarius. So that's actually good. It's tense. There's a lot of tension there, you know, but she pulls it off very well. And it is contributing, you know, the sixth house contributing to the various conflicts she has, as well as the inconjunct, you know, so it's not like she's getting off easy with these hard angles, hard aspects. No, still bringing conflict to her life. She's getting, you know, she's getting like the late show, and then it gets canceled because of the conflict, because of her husband, Jupiter's husband. You know, Mars is the eighth lord. Like I was looking at why did her husband commit suicide. I was looking at Venus. Venus looks okay here, right? It doesn't seem to have any. It's got a nice trine to the north node. There's nothing really, I mean, it seems like there's a little bit of a square to the ascendant, but it's not in the square signs, right? The square sign would be Cancer. So that's not really bad. Let's see, there is a little bit of a sesquisquare to Saturn, so maybe that's causing some difficulty, but not really death. I don't really think death, but so I think perhaps you could look here from Mars being the eighth house lord, conjunct Jupiter, which Jupiter can represent husband, and Jupiter's in poor dignity and detriment here, and conjunct the detrimental Neptune in the sixth house. And then it does have some difficult aspects against Moon and Sun. Perhaps that's it. Pluto is not really playing into the Jupiter, but to Neptune. Yeah, so unless I'm missing something, I would say probably this Jupiter is related with all that. It's got three difficult aspects, right? Moon, Saturn, and Sun. You know, and that's also probably going to give her a lot of strife and difficulty, discordant relationships in general throughout her career. You know, which she did. She's, you know, falling in, falling out, that sort of thing. Now we got South Node in Virgo. It's basically sixth house. So first, you know, first half of her life is more about, you know, the writing, the editorial. Second half of her life is much more creative and show business, right? Pisces is the glamour, the glitz, the cameras, the TV, the movies, the creativity. The 12th house Lord is not in great dignity, but, you know, Jupiter's Jupiter. I already talked about that. The main thing is this Saturn is an excellent dignity and this Mercury is an excellent dignity. It's not stationary or anything like that, but it's still very strong. And this trine between Saturn and the Sun is awesome, right? Really strong. Now, and then Mercury conjunct Venus also is excellent, right? It gives a lot of artistic integrity to her work, because the Venus is making, it's not just Mercury, is the Venus brings a lot of aesthetic value and warmth and softness and femininity. You know, Mercury and Venus together create, you'll see this a lot with artistic type people. Musicians a lot have it, artists, anything that anyone who's like has a really strong creative, you know, there's different combinations, but the conjunction is one type of commonly seen thing that, you know, between planets that do well. You know, when one planet is in excellent dignity and the other planet benefits, and when it's a really tight conjunction, then that's really strong. Carries kind of an Aries nature, the conjunction, so it's enhancing that Aryan quality, right? And then Jupiter to Moon also is excellent, even though it's a square. It's still connected, and it's still you know, helping with the Moon. Moon helps with Jupiter, right? Moon is Jupiter's exaltation lord. Jupiter expands the emotions. And what else? Mars square Jupiter. That's probably not so good. Like, that's creating a lot of tension for her, emotional tension. But you know, she turns it all into comedy gold. Really, I think all the difficulties in her life, she just found this funny twist on it and made it hilarious, and you know, made up a stand-up routine. She was like, you know, excellent one-liners, and you know, if you watch her just like quip, like go back and forth with her wit, it's just lightning fast. I mean, you know, go watch her on the do like go back and forth with Betty White, and I might do Betty White next, because you know, she was on the Tonight Show, Joan Rivers was hosting, Betty White was her guest, and they're just lightning fast going back and forth. It's awesome. I mean, these two old ladies who are legends in comedy, you know, are a perfect match for each other. They're great. They're hilarious together. It's really entertaining. Yeah. So yeah. This Uranus here is in the first house. Basically, it's pretty far from the ascendant, but yeah, maybe first. I mean, I'd say mostly first, because even though it's closer to the second cusp, it's out of sign. So I still think first, and that's going to make her very much a rebel. It's going to, you know, enhance this whole Discordia Eris kind of phenomenon, where she's just like disagreeable, doing her own thing, rebelling, being defiant, saying whatever she wants, being hilarious. Uranus is hilarious, or can be, especially like, you know, it's going to, if you're already funny, Uranus is going to make you like a billion times more funny. Like, I actually used to have a great sense of humor when I was a child, and I have Uranus conjunct the ascendant, and I'm a Gemini conjunct Venus. But somewhere along the line, like my nerves got the better of me, and so like all my humor became suppressed. And hopefully one day I'll heal enough to be able to be, spontaneously funny again. Right now I can't. So like sometimes a little bit, usually not. But for her, she already has that. So this Uranus is gonna enhance it tremendously, right? So this is the other, really funny quality that she'll have. This Uranus, it's not making that very many aspects to anything. I think mostly it's sextile the Mercury and Venus, and so that again, that's making her lightning fast, brilliant, and lightning quick wit, right? So smart, so on the ball, lucid. And then her north node is trine. It's out of sign, but it's still very close. The Mercury and Venus here. And that again, as she gets older, this is really coming alive. I mean, South Node conjunct South Node in Virgo. Virgo is not usually that funny, but for writing, it's excellent. It's going to activate the Mercury, but because of the trine, I like this Pisces even more, and it's better for show business, right? In the 12th house in Pisces, that's excellent for being on screen and camera and being creative and all that. Now she does have this Pluto semi-square Neptune. Neptune's in the 6th house. Neptune is in poor dignity because it's opposite its domicile in Pisces. And so we know she died not too young, but young enough. I mean, it wasn't like the full extent of her life. I sense foul play, but whether that you agree with that or not, it's irrelevant. The fact is that she died, right? And so I look at this. Neptune in the 6th shows like an invisible, hidden enemies, hidden internal, external. You be the judge of that. It's something hidden, something mysterious, something unseen, hidden health qualities, hidden problems. And Pluto, when it's in bad aspect, often means death. Not always. It can mean abuse. It can mean somebody who's like dominating you, controlling you, but it can very much mean death. And so, I think that contributed, to an early demise for her, right? So yeah, her and her husband, unfortunately, and that's sad. I'll just take a quick look at her draconic chart. North node in Aries, and this will be true of anyone with ascendant in Aries, but she doesn't have any planets in the 7th house natally. And North node in Aries, that tends to see, that means South node is on the descendant Libra. That tends to mean that, especially as she gets older, she's going to be iconic, but alone. South node creates detachment and separation with partner, right? So this does tend to lean towards somebody who's an iconic but alone or independent type person. Pardon me. Excuse me. I had to burp. Now let's see. Uranus is a bit closer to the 2nd house and closer to the 3rd house. That kind of makes sense. Chiron is playing right into this Mercury and Venus in Gemini. So again, the wounded reject, the sort of underbelly, the dirty laundry, the self-image. That's all going to play into her expressions, her material, right? And then a very strong Cancerian theme here with Lilith, Sun, Mercury, and Venus in the 4th house, right? So mother, being a mother, that was very important to her relationship with her daughter, far more important than I think we realize. And how many showbiz type people bring their children into their material, into their act. She worked with her daughter. That was a big part of her stuff. especially after the death of her husband, the suicide. I think, her and her daughter bonded over that, and it really brought out a maternal nature of Joan Rivers. Obviously, she was very, very concerned about her child, and that was a hugely important area for her, showing up in her draconic chart, right? Let's see, and then we get a very strong seventh house nature with South Node, Neptune, Jupiter, and Mars. And then Mars is the ascendant lord. It's in poor dignity in Libra. It's in detriment, right? And so that can talk about the nature of her husband as well, right? Husband committing suicide, Mars in the seventh, Mars ruling the eighth, Mars in poor dignity, Neptune, South Node, detachment, Neptune, disappearance. Jupiter is a benefic. Jupiter is ruling the 12th house, so loss of partner potentially. So perhaps that is significant there. In any case, relating to personal relationships, relating to the others, to the masses, being on stage, the likability factor, that's all there, right? Then we get a very prominent Capricorn moon in the 10th house, a boss moon, right? Capricorn moons are very, oriented towards career and success. Moon is in detriment in Capricorn. So perhaps she did have difficulty as a mother, even though it was very important to her, and perhaps difficulty or issues with her own mother. But, and again, Moon in Capricorn is going to represent something that is lacking dignity. So a public image that, not everybody liked Joan Rivers. She had her enemies. And so, a Capricorn moon is going to express that. It's going to have people in the public arena that there's going to be a undignified relationship. It can mean working with people who are down and out or undignified themselves, or just something that, an unhealthy relationship with the public in certain regards, in certain ways. I mean, this is draconic, so it's not her main chart, but there's still representation here. There's still has an effect. Something, people, not everyone liked Joan Rivers. Right. And then Saturn in Pisces, 12th house. Saturn's okay in Pisces, is not great, not terrible, but Saturn is leadership, and Saturn does well in the 12th house, by the way. It gains some kind of dignity, joy, or something like that. Yeah, it's not conjunct to anything, so I'm not going to put too much weight on it. In any case, I think that's everything for Joan Rivers. She does have her out of bounds planets, her moon, Mercury, and Venus. Those are the main ones. And those are groundbreaking. Whenever a planet is out of bounds, it's going to be groundbreaking. Out of bounds moon, and her moon is way out of bounds. They're going to push the envelope. They're going to push the boundaries. They're going to do things nobody's done before. Moon, Mercury, Venus. And this Mercury is in Gemini. So this is not like stationary, like we saw with Charles Manson or Lauryn Hill, but it's out of bounds. And so is this Venus. And so is this moon. So she's pushing the boundaries. And that's, I think that's what we all love Joan Rivers for her spark, her dynamism, her pushing the envelope, her being not afraid to stand out, be a rebel, this Uranus. So anyway, I think she's awesome. Hilarious. And my favorite that I've seen so far is just her going back and forth with Betty White. It's just like classic, right? So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and please hit the like button if you did, and subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment down below, and book a reading with me. Macroastrology.com, that's my website. Macrogoalmachine@yahoo.com is my email, and I will see you again soon. Ooh, excuse me. All right, thank you. Bye.